Joining us right now is former Virginia Attorney General and Ted Cruz supporter, Ken Cuccinelli. Sir, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be with you, Maria.
What does Ted Cruz need to do to continue the bit of momentum that he got last night? We were all talking on set earlier, and while some people feel like Ted Cruz has the goods, he's not liked by colleagues in the Senate, and that seems to be one of the overarching things that's hurting him so much. They'd rather go with Trump than Cruz.
Well, look, since this campaign began, Ted's favorability ratings, which, by the way, are outside the Beltway, have gone to become some of the best in the Republican field, far better than Donald Trump's, far better than Donald Trump's. And it is true that he has locked horns with every special interest group and the leadership and the establishment in Washington. But frankly, that's what voters want. And, you know, I was listening to you all talk earlier. If you think about this race in terms of if it were a one-on-one, what happens? If Ted Cruz gets out, then about half or more of his support goes to Donald Trump. He competes with Donald Trump for those individuals. No other candidate competes to keep them in the Republican fold. If Marco Rubio gets out, the vast majority of those votes come to Ted Cruz, not Donald Trump. And so that changes the race dramatically. That is not in Ted's control, but winning last night in 3 states, including a romping win in Texas, which is a huge delegate vote haul, has brought him well out in front of the rest of the pack, albeit in second to Donald Trump. So that's why you heard him talking about those issues last night, those issues that really make a difference to voters who are upset with Washington and in their lives looking forward.
Mr. Attorney General, well, what the heck happened to Ted Cruz in your state, in my home state? He came in third. Rubio was drew a lot of late deciders. My parents were inundated with Rubio robocalls in the days leading up to Super Tuesday. Where was your candidate?
Well, we weren't doing robocalls in Virginia. We were doing volunteer phone calls. And the truth of the matter is, in my humble opinion, being from Virginia, is that Jeb Bush getting out turned loose a lot of the what I'll call government Republican voters, a lot of people in Northern Virginia, the Bush network, and they've all been associated with government for a long time. Well, they naturally went to Rubio, the establishment candidate that's in the race. And this was a purely proportional state, first time for Virginia. So in terms of the delegate difference, we weren't hurt terribly badly in Virginia. We'd rather win every state, of course. But if you look down at, say, Alabama, Rubio didn't make the threshold. In Texas, he didn't make the threshold. I mean, he got hammered in those states.
Here's Steve Moore.
Hi, Ken. Good to see you.
Hey,
By the way,
Steve.
I agree with you. It was a good night, not a great night, but a good night for Ted Cruz. Terrible night for Rubio. Just 2 questions. First of all, you made this point that maybe it's time for Rubio to get out of the race, and is that something? Is that going to be one of your pitches? Do you think Ted Cruz will sort of make that pitch that maybe Rubio is the one who should get out? And second of all, you've said some pretty harsh things about Donald Trump in recent days and weeks. If Donald Trump is the nominee, could you get behind him?
Well, look, Donald Trump has said some unusually harsh things, even by Donald Trump standards, in the last few days. You all were talking about that earlier. You know, I just have a great level of discomfort with someone comfortably and knowingly quoting Mussolini. You know, that's on top of the KKK David Duke stuff. That is a real problem. He can win people like me back if he actually cares to do that, but he doesn't seem to care to do that. And I have real concerns about what that means for Republican candidates, what it means for this election cycle. I do agree with what you said earlier, Steve. This year, all other things being equal, it's the Republic advantage to Republicans, but we can give that away. I mean, no one is better at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory than Republicans. In 2012, we nominated the one guy who couldn't prosecute the Obamacare case. Well, Trump has trouble with that, too, in addition to all the other problems.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
But Ken, it's Matt Murray from the Journal. But let me ask on that point. So, Ted Cruz has won Texas, he's won Oklahoma, which is right next door. He has won some states. What state does he win that is outside his safety zone? Donald Trump is showing that he can bring new voters in. He's producing turnout everywhere. He's won in the Northeast. He's won in the South. If Marco Rubio drops out today, does Ted Cruz have a real chance in Florida? where does Cruz make a difference and show that he can really win beyond the base that he's comfortable with?
Sure. Well, first of all, you know, Donald's biggest win last night was in Massachusetts. Donald is not going to win Massachusetts in the general election. Not going to happen. And yes, they get delegate votes in the Republican National Convention, but Ted is competitive in all the states Republicans have to be competitive in. And he won his home state. Rubio is getting killed in his home state. It is also true that we are heavily reliant on our volunteer base down there. And if Rubio gets out, that changes the dynamic in Florida dramatically. And that's what, frankly, that's what I hope happens. I'm not a, you know, I haven't talked to Ted Cruz about that, but he was talking about unity last night. He was talking about bringing people together last night. And when you've had a week like Donald has in the last week, where you're making some really harsh, divisive type comments, that unity focus is something a lot of Republicans beyond the conservative base are looking for.
Yeah. Ken, do you think that the plan for Chris Christie is Attorney General? Or is the plan VP?
The plan is something with Chris Christie. Yeah. I thought the union leader withdrawing its endorsement, you know, you had Scott Brown in there, you know, that he knows that paper well. That's an amazing thing to see. They basically said if what he said to us is true, then he shouldn't be saying what he's saying today. So he's either lying then or lying now is the newspaper position. And that is, you know, New Jersey liberal endorses New York liberal. In some ways, it makes sense, but mostly from a personal perspective for Chris Christie. So, and he doesn't really bring votes. Endorsements that bring networks and bring votes matter. His own supporters, Christie's own supporters, are appalled with what Christie has done. So that's not bringing votes to Donald Trump. He gets a nice big attack dog to join him, which is what Christie has been doing. Nonetheless, he doesn't bring networks of votes to the table.
In fact, aren't there like a few newspapers in New Jersey right now, Dagan, asking him to resign?
Yes.
No, they're kicking him in the teeth.
Yeah, they want him to resign. They don't like what he's saying. They say it's opportunistic. Ken, good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
Maria, good to be with you all.
Ken Cuccinelli joining us there.